feel like, I don't know, just in a rut. I let myself go too far down, and now I'm in the valley.
Of what?
Life.
Anxiety, depression?
Not so much anxiety or depression. Well, I guess more depression, I would say.
About what?
Just how today's been going. Like, it's not that it's been necessarily bad. I just let my emotions get a hold of me, and it took me down. So now I'm trying to go back up, at least to the middle, so I can do the podcast. We have a lot of topics today. We have anxiety, dealing with others that don't agree, and lastly, having grace for others in times of need.
What about when that need is our own selves?
That's where the hard part comes in. Having grace for yourself is the hardest part.
Maybe what?
Because especially, it depends on the person. Me, I take my faults personally, and I really beat myself up for them.
Like what?
Like if I mess something up, it can ruin a whole day. I don't know if that has to do with me having like my bipolar, and if I see something that just I'm not happy with, it can take me down to this place that's just not fun. And right now I'm trying to get over that for today, and I feel like talking about it does help. So, you want to start our first little topic? All right.
Let's go.
Oh man, this is.
I like how we accidentally wore the same color.
I know, we did it.
It's like
It's
pretty
almost
spot on.
exactly
Yeah,
the
I know.
same, yeah.
He copied me.
This is a serious topic for me because I've had anxiety for years.
Okay, same.
I've been dealing with it for years. One day, I just had this creeping anxiety come over me, almost debilitating. Like I couldn't do anything for I did stuff here and there, but for a few years.
Let's go back to the beginning because for me, I think I was always an anxious person, but my family and like the fact that the times that we were growing up, it wasn't named like anxiety. It was like something's wrong with you.
Yeah,
you're
something
acting
was
up.
wrong with us.
In my case, it was like you're being a brat. You're acting up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like the times we were living in, mental health was still stigmatized, and we weren't allowed to have bad days. It was us not cooperating or not being in line how we should.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays it's starting to really turn the other corner where mental health is being focused on. I think it's also getting taken to some extreme.
And I've noticed this like on the internet and stuff like that, where people like have their mental illness in their bio and stuff like that. And I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. Like
you're like too identifying with the issues maybe that you have or something, or people like self-labeling and self-diagnosing themselves.
The biggest thing that I was taught was you are not your diagnosis.
Yeah.
You're more than that.
Yeah.
You're still a person. And I think a lot of people are playing into being their diagnosis or their some sort of mental illness, and they're hyping themselves up on that, which I think is unhealthy.
Yeah.
So, I have anxiety. I am not anxiety. I have bipolar. I'm not bipolar necessarily. Like, that's not my identity. It comes up and it happens, but that's not the full me. My anxiety, I've had it for a really long time. It mostly started in probably around 2015. And I struggled with it really hard up until, I'd say maybe 16. Because I think I was doing pretty good in 2015. I think it started in 2016 or maybe even 17. But it was a good like 3 or 4 years where I struggled with anxiety every day. It was hard to do anything. And then one day, 2021, I literally woke up and it was like almost gone. Like I still get anxiety, but it's not crippling like it was. And I really enjoy living life again without having to deal with that. And it wasn't anything I did. Like it was literally just me waking up and being like, I feel good today. Like, what happened?
For me, it almost felt like to go through like a cartoon or something. It was like, I don't even know if this is Eeyore, but it does a like rain cloud literally follow him.
I think so.
But it felt like that for me. Like anxiety was like this thing that was just like following me. And even in like the most relaxing of atmospheres or moments, it would be something that just like boom happened to me.
For me, it was like intense, like almost every day when I had it. I can't point a finger where it came from. Can't point a finger where it went. But I'm happy it's gone. I'm happy I don't have to live like that right now. I'm happy it's at least curbed. Like I get like regular anxiety now. Like it'll be like, oh, maybe I had too much coffee, get a little anxious from getting the jitters from the coffee or something, you know? And it's not something that's like looming over my head
every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
I still get it slightly every day, but it's not like unbearable.
So I think our topic we wanted to do though was like more about like getting over anxiety, not just we have anxiety. So
I wanted to explain though to like the audience and the people, like what anxiety can do to you, because honestly, like there was a few years where like I struggled to like even do anything.
Well, even right now when we were gonna film,
I got anxiety,
and
I just had a meltdown. It wasn't like the worst thing ever, but it was just like I can't focus, so I just had this meltdown.
Yeah.
And nothing was coming to me. All I could think about was the anxieties of what I was dealing with at the moment. I was like, I can't film. I can't do this. I need to get out of this. I need to go clear my head. And I sat down and I was like talking to you about it. And it kind of just floated away.
Yeah. And I think that we have to like kind of make space for that anxiety, because like there's this book that I like. It's like a picture book, but it's really good. It's called What Do You Do with the Problem? And again, it's like the storm cloud, and it's this little kid has a problem, and it's a storm, and it's just like over their head, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And until you face the storm, you can't get over it, because it's so like the elephant in the room. You're trying to avoid it. And so you work yourself into like a tizzy trying to avoid it, instead of just like, okay, let me face this issue right now and then get through it.
Yeah. I definitely think dealing with the issue instead of throwing a Band-Aid on it and kind of just going about your business.
Actually, let's see if this is true. I don't know how true this is, but I saw this on TikTok. That buffalo, when there's going to be a storm, buffalo, instead of running away from the storm, they run towards the storm. That way they kind of like pass it.
I've heard this. I don't know if it's true.
I don't either.
But like it makes sense.
It's a good metaphor though.
It makes sense because a lot of animals do have instincts we don't have.
Yeah.
So going through the storm would be a lot easier than waiting it out.
And waiting for that fear, waiting for that thing to happen.
Yeah.
Instead, you run towards it, it crosses you, maybe get a little bit of the storm, but then it passes.
Yeah.
And I think with anxiety, you kind of live as if you're like running in circles trying to run away from the storm, instead of just allowing the storm to pass.
Or you're just living in the eye of it.
Yeah. What does that mean though?
But
just living anxiously?
Just living anxiously. Like
Yeah.
you're living in the eye of the storm. You're just fully in the storm all the time.
Yeah.
Like you can't, you try to get out of it, but you're stuck somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just pouring all around you and you don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
Instead of going and running one way and helping yourself.
Mm-hmm. This topic makes me uncomfortable, though.
Why does it make you uncomfortable?
It's stressful to think about.
For me, it's talking about it is therapy.
Okay.
Like, I love
Therapy?
I love talking about it. And I love. Speaking of, I don't know when my therapy is.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll cut this out. The one last thing I wanted to speak on was how my faith also played into my anxiety. Growing up, I grew up in a Christian household, but I kind of followed. I never really dove into it. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Didn't dive into what?
Like Christianity, and really, I believed, but I never really lived it out.
Okay.
And I think as I've gotten older and looked into it more and found my own way spiritually, I really got back into it around the time that my anxiety went away. Mm-hmm. So I found that interesting is when I started thinking about my faith more and applying it to life a little better is when my anxiety did get a little better. So I think a lot of anxieties, I'm not saying it's going to be like that for everybody. It's not like faith is like this magical thing that automatically makes anxiety go away. But I feel like it can help you if you believe in certain things. Especially me.
See, that's where I don't really... It's not that I disagree. It's just that in my experience, I was working at my church that I was attending at the time when I started to have panic attacks. And my panic attacks were basically brought on by the fact that I had to commute to Fresno State.
But that has something to do with your faith necessarily.
No, but I'm telling a story here.
Okay. Sorry.
But for me, I was going to the church, and I was not necessarily raised in a house that went to church regularly, anything like that. We just believed in God in vague ways of being told to pray every once in a while. But I wasn't I didn't read the Bible or anything like that. So I went to church and I started having anxiety, and then it made me feel really guilty. And I felt a lot of shame about having anxiety because then I'm going to this church and I'm listening to this messages about having faith and believing in God and trusting God. And then internally I'm having all of these anxious feelings. And then I was also not feeling comfortable talking about those anxious feelings. So then it was a lot of shame of my anxiety and feeling like I couldn't talk about it because then people would just be like, oh, I wasn't actively speaking out about it because it didn't feel like something that you were necessarily appropriate to share. Oh, I feel really anxious. So then I felt like I had to keep it inside and not talk about it. And then it just made me feel more shame and more guilt.
I feel that's one area that a lot of churches in general kind of fall short on.
Is what?
There is real mental health problems that people deal with.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I'm not saying faith alone can do it. It's possible it can. But there's people with real mental health issues. If you have anxiety or depression, or you have bipolar, or you have schizophrenia or whatever, that some people need to have a medication or need to see a therapist for certain reasons. I'd say we get into more of this next week. Mm-hmm. We got plenty to talk about.
Are we wrapping this up?
I think so. We have a half-hour video already.
He cut me off.